Today we're going to learn how to make the simplest version of a rosary, a beaded rosary. It is important that we use the correct supplies in order to make this as easy as possible. So what I have in my hand, these are the websites that you would purchase from. From rosarymakingparts.com, you would purchase this number 7 bonded white nylon twine cord. You will also need some 6x9mm transparent plastic mission beads. I am using the reds for the Hail Marys and the clear for the Our Father. You can use any two colors, and I would alternate the Our Father color, make sure it's something that differentiates it enough as there's no spacing in between them. But make sure that it is the transparent, meaning that it has a little bit of that see-through look to it. They do sell solid ones as well, but those are not as easy to work with, so I would recommend the transparent beads. And also from streetevangelization.com, you can get this wonderful metal Saint Benedictine crucifix. You get the regular size, not the large size. And these are really nice quality, made in Italy crucifixes that you can get at a very reasonable price. So you're going to start out with 4 feet of the white cord. And what I do is I dip the ends in clear nail polish and let them dry. That will make it so much easier and faster. Otherwise it will fray and you'll have to keep trimming it as you go along. So I would recommend doing that first. You start by taking one end and tying one knot at one end, and that just operates as a stopper so that the beads don't fall through. And you're going to start by making the body of the rosary starting here. So each decade, of course, is 10 beads. So I would take out 10 beads and have them ready to go. I would recommend probably using either a tablecloth or a placemat or something of cloth to hold the beads so they don't roll around. You'll see them rolling around the paper. And as you put them on, I would recommend doing 2 beads at a time, because a lot of times if you do make a mistake in counting the beads, you'll accidentally have 9 or 11, which will give you an odd number of beads. And if you do 2 at a time, it'll draw your attention to that. I've made thousands of rosaries, and inevitably it is very easy to have the wrong number in a decade, and then you have to take it apart and start over, which is very frustrating. So I'm always super careful about taking the beads out, counting them out first, putting them on 2 at a time, and even once you feed them through, I would go ahead and count them again, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so you know they're there. So you have the 10 Hail Mary beads, you put on 1 Our Father bead, and then you continue. And you're going to put on 10 more Hail Mary beads. So as you do that, you will eventually end up with your rosary, which is here. And you'll see that you have a total of the 4 Our Father beads in this section here. No Our Father beads on the far ends. So that's important to remember. No Our Father beads on the far ends. Once you get to this point, you're going to take where you put the knot and kind of slide it down to give you room to tie it together. And then go ahead and line it up. Now, as long as you didn't make any mistakes, everything should line up beautifully. If I kind of put my finger in the middle, you can see there's 10 there as well. And that way you don't have to go back and count each section, although you can, as long as they line up properly. The hardest part about this is tying this knot, and it's not hard at all, but it's the most difficult part, if anything. So what you're going to do is with the 2 strings together, tie it like you would tie the end of a balloon. So 2 strings together, and you're going to feed them both through here and pull them all the way through. Now, it's very important when you put this knot in place, you want to make sure that the beads are pushed all the way as far down as they can go. And then when you put the knot in, you want to keep it somewhat close and leave maybe just like a 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch at the most on each side. You don't want the knot down here because then they're going to slide too much. It's okay if there's a little give when they're praying, but you don't want it to be too much. So that's just about right there. So that's called the centerpiece knot. You make your centerpiece knot. Don't worry about the short end. We'll cut that later. And then you continue with the end of the rosary. And the end of the rosary consists of 1 Our Father, 3 Hail Marys, and then, of course, 1 more Our Father bead at the very end. And then once you get to this point, you want to add the crucifix here. So you take your crucifix, which is already on the ring, on the jump ring, you feed that through, and then what you do is you take this end, and this is where the nail polish end comes in really handy, and you feed it back up the section. And you can go ahead and do this 1 bead at a time, because in the end, when we pull it all the way through, it'll all tidy up just very nicely. Sometimes you can do multiple beads at the same time, depending on spacing. If you were to do this with the solid plastic beads, this is where it gets difficult, because for some reason on the transparent beads, they have just a little bit more room in that hole. and it makes this part a little bit easier. That's why it's important. You might be able to do it with the other ones, but I wouldn't guarantee it. Okay, so once you fed it all the way through all the beads, you just take the string and pull it all the way through, and you'll see the crucifix comes up nicely there, and just continue to play with that until you get it all the way up to where you want it. And there you go. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this. At this point, we need to cut and burn these to finish it off. My recommendation is you cut them and burn them together so that they somewhat singe together. This white cord burns very quickly. You have to keep an eye on it because if you burn through that little section right there, this whole piece, bottom part will come out and you'll have to take the beads out and throw the cord away. So I'm going to show you how to do that. You would cut it, I would give it maybe a ½ an inch or so, like that. My recommendation is to use a candle, especially if you're doing a bunch of them. It really works out nicely with the candle. And you want to be very careful to not have it fall apart, and don't burn your fingers. Blow it out, and then while they're still hot, you can kind of just touch them to one another. Okay? And when you do that, what it should do is it should create a nice stopper, almost like a glue, if you will, so that they won't come apart. And there you have it, your simplest form of a rosary. I will show you one more thing on the cutting and burning in case it's difficult for you to cut and then burn them together. If you're having a hard time with that, you can also burn them individually, which is fine as well. In which case what you would do is, I probably should have done these one at a time. Okay, just burn one end like that and blow it, and you'll see it kind of mushrooms a little bit. So that mushroom will keep it from falling out. You want to make sure that you do have somewhat of a mushroom or it will come apart. And then you can take the other cord here, burn that as well. And so now you have 2 mushrooms. Instead of burning them together, melting them together, they're individual, but it still operates in the same fashion in that it operates as a stopper, and they won't come undone. So my recommendation is to burn them together if you can. If you cannot, then this will work as well. And again, there you have your finished rosary.